It's Meet the Artist. Today, a one-on-one with guitar great Joe Konas. Joe, thanks for joining us.
Oh, no, it's my pleasure. Very, very much so. Good friend of mine, Joe Quinlan, ladies and gentlemen. And we've known each other for a long, long time.
Long time. Will you bring us back to your hometown in the 1960s when you were growing up? Just a little bit about your background.
Well, we moved to Trenchy's Farm, which was in Langley, and which is by Slough, Windsor. And we lived there. And when I was 12 and a half, I'm going to get into this, my mum bought me this with my stepdad, Stephen Konas. And I was about 12 and a half, and that was 1960. And George Harrison had a similar one to this. And I started playing this. And my mum played a little bit of a piano and a little bit of guitar. So she actually knew how to tune one of these up because I had no clue. And this came with a book. So I looked at the G chord. I said, oh, okay. Then the E minor, the C, and so forth. So I went through all of that. The first song that I actually learned was called Apache. And all we had was a radio. Do you want me to carry on?
Yeah.
And all we had was a radio, because I may go on for 2 days now. We had a radio. So what it was, Radio Luxembourg in Europe, by Switzerland and Germany and out there.
Radio Luxembourg.
Every Saturday and Sunday, from 12 to probably 6 to 12 or 6 to 11, will play the #1 record. So they would play it. By then I knew a few chords and a few notes from other friends. But when I heard Apache by the Shadows, which was also done by Bert Weedon, skiffle guy like Ronnie Donegan, I heard that chord, so I listened to it, then I heard that chord, and that repeated twice. So I wrote that down on a piece of paper. At the end of the song, that's how it ended, but then I heard this. And then, so when I put it all together, I'm cutting the story short, it went like this. So I played A minor, D, and so forth. Next hour, 7 o'clock, they went, learned that. The third hour, they went, I didn't have a tape recorder because we had no money. We only had a radio. So at the end of Saturday, I could play the whole song within reason, all written out. That's how we used to do it. Not like it is now. Take your first finger, put it on the second string, and third finger and fourth finger, and that'll give you the chord of C. There was none of that. You had to use one of these there. It was funny though. It was good. That's how I learned in Langley there. It was fun.
So you learned your first song by ear, and how old were you?
I was 12 and a half years old. I got this because my birthday is January the 6th. But I got this in the middle of summer, roughly. Because we're off school, the mates are hanging around, and most of us had, well, these beautiful El Cheapo guitars here. It was fun. It was good to do. That's how I learned. And then one thing led to another, which I'm sure someone's going to say something.
So we're in the 1960s at the birth of the British invasion, the British boom. How does a young lad like yourself get noticed and eventually end up playing guitar for the gods?
Cutting the story short, I formed up a band called the Mark Barry Band with David Taylor from Edison's Lighthouses on bass and a bunch of other guys. And we're playing at the Bournemouth Pavilion. And we played there several times. And we opened up for the gods, which was Ken Hensley, Lee Kerslake, and Paul Newton Jr. So we opened up, and of course on lead guitar was Mick Taylor. So after we finished playing, we listened to the gods, and they had, of course, they were marvelous. And Ken Hensley came up and said, "Give me your phone number. I'd like to give you a shout and see if you'd like to join up with the band. And we could talk about it on the phone," which we did. Because Mick Taylor at that time was going to join up with John Mayall at that time, you know. So he was going there, and they liked my playing and singing, I guess, you know. And that's how I started with the gods.
Wow, that's an incredible story of discovery, and I suppose one that was repeated many, many times through that era.
Yeah, that was a great era. Of course, we'll never see that one again, Joe.
No.
Never. No, all that talent, my Lord. It was just from 60 to 70, because I came over in the end of 70 into 71, but that 10 years and all the clubs that people have played in, and meeting people and jamming or just going to see them, or something. But that's how it started with the Gods there,
So what comes to mind when I say favorite live appearances with the Gods? What's something that pops into your head?
There was no bars there. It was all clubs, like the Speakeasy, the Revolution. What else was there? Bag of Nails. A lot of people would play all those kind of clubs, and then of course you had the university and colleges. And we did a lot of big opening gigs for bands, and the big ones were great because some of them were the New Year ones, but then you had like maybe 15 bands playing there, like the Free or this and that, but we're all like 19, 20 years old, we're all the same age. If you look at Mick Jagger then, nobody really knew maybe who he was because everybody was starting out. But now he's an icon after 60 years. But no one was an icon when you're 20 years old, if you know what I mean. So, but we all had fun. We're just a bunch of young lads rocking and rolling.
Well, fantastic. So there's no major concert that actually made you feel like, wow, big crowd. First time you were in front of a big crowd with God.
Yeah, well, that was like the Alexandra Palace, the Ali Pali, like the Kings would say, and then Crystal Palace. There was another place, I think there was about 4 of them. I think there's only 2 left. But that there again, that's playing with 20 bands. On my Facebook, well, I don't know if I should say that, but on my Facebook, I have a lot of that promo on there, listing all the bands. There's a lot of bands on there. Some bands that were popular in Canada or the States, but were big in England and Europe. So you may have Kippeting Lodge. You maybe not have heard of them. Badfinger was a great band because they made it, but there was a lot of bands that didn't. You never heard of them. Cliff Richard and the Shadows never made it in Canada. They may have come and done a few gigs, but it was, Europe, Australia, that area. It depends on the bands. You know what I mean?
Right.
Same thing with the Gods, of course,
Right, and another great memory must be when you were with the Gods going into Abbey Road Studios to record.
With Abbey, yeah, we were jamming away there, and it was Roy Featherstone, no longer with us, but he came out and we auditioned for him, and he liked us, and we signed a 4-year contract, which was 4 albums and 2 singles per year, and that's how it was. That was, of course, exciting in itself, and going into Abbey Road, because when we were recording, the Beatles were downstairs doing the double white one, and we were in Studio 1, and there was 2, and the third one was the big one downstairs next to the little restaurant there, like a cafeteria, the old caf. And so we were upstairs doing our stuff, and we were there for a bunch of years, and it was really funny because we went through a few bass changes, Paul Newton Jr. left, so we ended up with Greg Lake, and we were with him. Then we went through another change, and it was John Glasgow, and we were all in that Studio 1, and actually John went to the bathroom, and I said, I have to go to the bathroom as well. So what happened was, he went in, I went in, and I'm leaving, open the door. That's the only time I ever saw Paul McCartney in those 4 years. Hello! I said, oh, how are things going? Great, that kind of stuff. That once, and then I looked a little bit further on down the corridor, and John was always laying on, actually every time I saw him, he was laying on his back going, everything was that Chuck Berry 12-bar stuff, maybe because of the era. But you're not allowed to do that. If they caught you, they're terminated. So you open the door, and you could look down to Studio 3. And it was just funny to see that, you know, whatever. And I had a quick look, but John was more obvious because he was always laying down, believe it or not, and playing rock and roll Chuck Berry stuff, having fun, not seeing them actually record, but jamming, if you know. And that was the only time when we all pulled in, you know, to the front doors, because there's a car park in front there. You know, you see the silver Rolls, which I believe it was John's, and a Mini, you know, which was George Harrison's. That was about it.
Wow.
You don't see them. You just don't see them, you know.
Well,
they stick to themselves, you know. And George Martin, I never saw George at all. You know, we had David Paramore was Cliff Richard, the Shadows, probably the Hollies, all the big stuff, you know. But we had his son, David Paramore, and our contract actually was to keep it more pop, like Marmalade. You know what I mean? Because they did, you know, like. Desmond keeps a barrel in a marketplace. So, but some of the guys in the band didn't want to go pop, so we sort of went popish with our writing. With Ken Hensley and I, we did, you know, probably 90% of the writing together. But we didn't really want to go, but we had to do something like that. So I wrote a song called Baby's Rich, you know, which was poppy, but when we played live, it was, we were loud, rude and obnoxious, with head down to here, you know, rock and roll. But in the studio, it was, because that's really sort of, they wanted to go that route there, you know, so we try and mix two things together, you know, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. But when we played it, you know, the other way around on stage, well, that was more power, you know. But that was the year when we were doing it. But then when the Cream came out and Hendrix came out, everything was like. He didn't play on this guitar, though. He had a nice white one here. But that was a different era now. So now it became heavier and heavier. You know, when you heard, like, you know. What was that remind you of? People try to put. Right, so now, yeah, because we used to open up for those guys with my band, you know, so we sort of got to know them, especially with Keith Moon. Wild man, great guy, those are great guys. But we're all the same age, about 20 years old, 19, 20, 21.